And actually, it's a very interesting moment in time for CSS, because after many years, we almost, within a week or so, the revised version of Level 2. Level 2, you may know, is already quite old, but we've done a lot of work on making it more stable. And before the end of this month, we expect to have a new version of that. So let me start right at the beginning, so you understand a bit where we're coming from. CSS is quite old already. The first level of CSS, the very core features, were standardized in 1996. We call that level 1. It's the simple things like margins and colors and fonts. That was quickly followed by level 2, 98, and that's what everybody's been using since then. The goals of CSS font were to create something beautiful, of course, create nice pages, they're easy to read, but not only, there were other things we wanted to do as well. For example, we wanted to split HTML from the style, so that the HTML itself would be easy to use and easy to write. You could concentrate on the text on the one hand, and somebody else or yourself at a different moment in time could concentrate on the style. That makes it also easy to change the style afterwards. You once have the text, and then you change the style only by changing the style sheet. You don't have to touch the text again. Turns out that together, the text and the style take up less space as well as when you combine them. So it's faster. So those goals were there from the start. They are still there. But CSS itself developed a lot since then. I don't have data for the whole of the period from 96 to now. These are some statistics I did for the past 5 years or so. It's a bit small maybe to see, but it says roughly that in 2006, already about 66% of all web pages used CSS, and at the moment we're up to about 78% and still growing. So I guess most of you know what is in CSS Level 2. Just a quick reminder, it has things like setting the border around the text, the colors, choosing a font. You can create tables, you can create images that float to the side, or not just images, but also pieces of the text that are put next to other pieces. We now have, as I already said, almost finished the first revision. So we revised the original specification. We found where the errors were. We found what implementations the various browsers were actually doing, where the ambiguities were. And we did a lot of work over the past years to improve the specification, make it more interoperable, make sure that all the implementations did exactly the right thing. And that's what we have now. That is what we call the first revised edition, also known as 2.1. And one of the reasons that is so important is also that that will form the base for the next level of CSS, level 3. So why do we need level 3 if level 2 is already so successful? Well, there were a number of things that we needed more time for. One of the things we originally planned to do in CSS was downloadable fonts, for example. Everybody has a set of fonts on his computer, but if that set of fonts is different from the set of fonts that the designer has, then the page will not look exactly the same. So one idea we had already back then in 98 was to allow fonts to be embedded in the page. And then when you download the page, the font gets downloaded as well. You see the page with exactly the right font. that proved too difficult at the time. It was too much work, technically not yet possible. Also, there were problems with copyright. We didn't have the right framework for knowing when you were allowed to use a font and when not. So those things still had to be figured out, and now we do have them figured out, and they will be in level 3. Actually, in most browsers they already work because we have experimental of them. Other things were speech synthesis. If you don't want to display the page but have it read out by a speech synthesizer, we have style for that too, because you need to select the voice to speak it with, the volume, the speed at which it is spoken. Those things were in level 2 originally. Turned out that implementations had trouble with them, so we left them out of level 2, and now they will be in level 3 instead. There's a few other features like that that turned out to be too hard at the time, and that will be coming soon. In the meantime, we also got a lot of comments, feedback from people using CSS that there were things that they wanted to do with CSS that were not originally planned. It turned out that CSS was so popular that what I had originally expected to replace CSS was not possible. People wanted to continue using CSS and just expand it rather than replace it with something else. So that's what we're doing. We're extending it. Level 3 will be much and much bigger than level 2. So it's so big I can't show you everything. This is the best I can do. And it's so small you can't even read it. But these are about 40 different modules, different specifications that all together are going to make up level 3. We even don't know yet whether it will be 40 or 35 or 45. We haven't decided on everything yet. So you see here the very core in the middle. That's the CSS1. The circle around that is level 2. It has already more features. And level 3 is the big circle in the end at the outer side. It is made up of modules about doing images, doing text in various different languages. For example, writing modes, it says here, that has to do with making text not only horizontal but also vertical. There's many more. I'll show you a few of them in the later slides. So, some of the important features in various modules are, I already said it, making the text vertical for Japanese. Not only for Japanese, but Japanese is the most demanding language for that. They have very strict rules for how to lay out Japanese characters. And so far we've only been able to do that horizontally, and now we will be able to do it vertically as well. Apart from doing vertical, people also may want to do diagonally, so rotate text, as you see right there. This is actually rotated text. This is not an image. This is already working in the browser I'm using here. It's actually rotated by using CSS. And you can do other things than rotating as well. You can stretch it. You can mirror the text as if you're reading in a mirror. All kinds of things you can do with the text. And not just the text, you can do it with the images too. We also have dynamic effects. Well, we already had dynamic effects. You have this effect. This is the hover effect, for example. You move the mouse and the style changes. But until now, that had been an immediate change. There is no time between the old and the new style. And that's 10 years ago, we thought that was cool, that was fancy, that was modern. But now we think, we can do better. Your eyes are more used to movement than to immediate changes, so we want to do this. It's only half a second, that's enough, but already looks much better. Well, maybe not when I do it, I'm not a designer, but imagine this in the hands of a designer. And of course, what I'm using here is just font spacing. I put some space between it, but you can imagine any style change the color, change the size, change the position. You can make things move. Anything you can do with CSS, you can now do delayed as well, with a transition, as we call it. Screens have been getting a lot bigger since '98 as well. And to make use of all that space, you can't just make the text wider. That's a waste of space. You want to make columns. You want to put things side by side. And if you're a designer, you've probably struggled with float and making things in 3 columns. And maybe you've even tried making things in 4 columns. It's getting very difficult using floats for that. So what you really want is real columns and some sort of a grid to align things to. Sort of a table, but not a real table, just a table for visual purposes. A term that's often used for that is the design grid. You can also call it a layout or just a grid. We have many ideas for that. Experiments are going on, and I expect you will soon, a couple of months maybe, be able to do the experiments yourself using the new modules of CSS. When we started back in the 90s, people didn't use round shapes. Rounded corners were out of fashion. Those were 70s styles. People didn't use them anymore, so we left them out of CSS. We did everything rectangular, sharp corners. But now people want things like this, rounded corners, and shadows, and gradients. So we are creating those as well. Those are, you can already use them. They are implemented in several browsers, often still experimentally, so they may still change a bit. But if you want, you can already try and see how it looks using CSS for rounded shapes and for shadows. And if you do printing, you may want to do this. These are called leaders. There's a row of dots here. It's often seen in tables of contents between the name of a chapter and the page number. Those two are on their way. So, those were experimental features for the most part, but some of them are already quite stable. So to help, especially implementers, especially to help implementers, we have put out a note that says which parts are already stable, which we want people to implement first and use first. We started doing that some years ago, but the publication got a bit delayed. We call that a snapshot. So the stable parts at the moment consist of these, level 2. This is for use inside HTML markup. You can use XML namespaces in the CSS selectors. You can use all the new selectors that we defined for selecting, for example, the second element or the third element, selecting all empty elements, things like that. You can use the new colors, transparent colors, for example. Those are all stable, implemented. And also something called the media queries, if you want to have multiple style sheets for big screens, for small screens, for mobile devices, for TVs. You can all combine those with media queries. That is stable. You can actually use that now. So I think the time is up, so I won't show you what's in the level 3 modules, but you can find that on our website, the CSS pages on the W3C site. If you want to see my talk again, it is online, if you have time to note the URL. So I think I'll go to the next speaker then.
Thank you.
And let me introduce him. It's an old colleague of mine. I worked with him for some years when he was at W3C. He's now at Opera Software. And his name is Charles McCathieNevile. Charles?
Hey. Thank you. And so now we have Charles McCathieNevile will be talking about HTML5 and friends. And Charles is joining us from Opera with his lovely hat.
Es que prometí que le pondré. Una pregunta. ¿Hay alguien que no entiende castellano? Muy bien. Hacemos en castellano entonces. Tenemos un tiempo limitado, pues voy a hacer mucha publicidad de la empresa y después hablar un rato de los estándares. La empresa Opera es súper impresionante, hace de todo. Empiezo con, para estándares, los widgets, que son un grupo de estándares del consorcio web para hacer aplicaciones. Ya sabemos, todo el mundo, todo el futuro es aplicaciones. La diferencia entre una aplicación y una cosa de la web, mayormente es que si pones algo en la web, funciona en cualquier dispositivo, en cualquier sistema operativo, que sea en el televisor, que sea en el laptop, que sea en un móvil, que sea en el coche. Y si hace una aplicación, hay que hacer una aplicación para cada plataforma, para cada sistema operativo. Es trabajo, trabajo, trabajo y más trabajo para repetir lo que ya está hecho. Entonces, lo que hacen los widgets es permitir un híbrido, que se pueda hacer una página web y con un poco de trabajo. Tengo las instrucciones, aquí no, pero en una tarjeta de visita, en serio, para hacer su aplicación, un widget, una aplicación web, que funcionaría en cualquier sistema, en el desktop, en el móvil, en el televisor, en todo. Hoy en día hay otro modelo que proponen los de Google y Mozilla. En vez de usar widgets, aplicaciones instaladas, dicen, no, hacemos como aplicación en la web. La diferencia, técnicamente, es muy poco. En vez de usar como 10 líneas de XML para describir, usan 10 líneas de JSON. Es nada. Para un programador es 3 minutos aprender la diferencia. La diferencia real más o menos existe en quién guarda los datos, en quién controla la información que forma parte de la aplicación. Pues la próxima generación de los widgets, de las aplicaciones, tendremos que reunir esos dos modelos, lo que usamos nosotros, lo que usamos Nokia y China Unicom y Vodafone, con lo que usa Google y Mozilla para hacer. ¿Quién quiere estándares? Los desarrolladores, para que no tienen que trabajar tanto. Es importante. Y los jefes, para que no tienen que pagar tanto. ¿Qué más hacemos? Ahora mismo, una aplicación nativa tiene tanta capacidad, acceso a ficheros, a la agenda, a geolocalización. Puede lanzar una llamada de teléfono, un SMS. Mira, ya tenemos eso en la web, en aplicaciones web. El trabajo técnico hemos hecho hace 5 o 6 años. Hay versiones ya, hay la capacidad de usar todas esas capacidades en su widget, en su aplicación web y hacer una aplicación, pero con gran mercado. Opera voy a pasar. Es súper interesante, pero para otro día. Una cosa Bert ya empezó a hablar es del buen aspecto de la web, ¿no? Para hacer una aplicación, hay que hacerlo guapo. Entonces, tenemos ya en la web SVG. No sé si lo conocen, pero si no, búscalo, aprende. Es una forma súper fácil de hacer aplicaciones gráficas, de hacer interfaces ricas, riquísimas, súper adaptativas, pero muy fácil. Es como escribir HTML. Es decir, se enseñe a los niños de la escuela. Jefes escuchan, son más baratos ellos. Programadores escuchan, así se puede subcontratar el hermano pequeño. tenemos Canvas, otra cosa, para permitir videojuegos, gráficos en tiempo real, muy reales. Tenemos unos problemas. La accesibilidad de SVG, en teoría, es estupendo. Hemos hecho muchísimo trabajo para asegurar que se puede hacer casi todo lo que quiere. Una imagen interactiva, un gráfico, sin ningún problema de accesibilidad. Solo nos queda un poco de trabajo para realizarlo en el navegador. Porque en realidad ningún navegador permite un buen acceso para la gente con discapacidad a un SVG. Canvas no tiene ni eso. Ya tiene más trabajo para hacer. Los dos vamos a hacer, eso es una preocupación del consorcio web. Es una preocupación de los gobiernos, de las empresas grandes, de la gente que entiende. Para hacer un medio de comunicación universal es que hay que usar, ¿no? Hay que poder comunicar con todos. Hemos lanzado vídeo en HTML5. Es una nueva cosa y vídeo sí ya tiene muchísimo de accesibilidad. Es súper importante, ya para el vídeo está hecho, mucho trabajo, pero llegó. Y HTML5 en sí, el futuro de todo, lo que va a ser la web de mañana, lo del buzzword que reemplace Web 2.0 y Ajax y todos los buzzwords antiguos, casi está. Llega al mundo real, llega al mundo de los usuarios, procesadores, formularios, capacidades. Se puede usarlo hoy en día, no 100%, porque no está acabado. El consorcio web han dicho, mira, creemos que vamos a acabarlo en el año 2014. Eso es el futuro de hoy. Eso es un cambio grande, porque antes dijeron, sí, vamos a acabarlo en 2022. Una cosa más que cambia la web en general, ahora viene el mundo de televisión. Y el mundo de televisión dicen, HTML5 tiene vídeo, tiene accesibilidad, tiene capacidad de hacer lo que queremos hacer. Aplicaciones interactivas en la televisión y además tiene distribución. ¿Alguien no puede acceder a la web en su vida en general? Bueno, sí, algunos. Voy a hablar de eso. Pero hay mucha gente que usa televisión, que lo entiende. Y traer todo ese mundo a la web, eso implicará un cambio que hay que esperar. El futuro es oscuro, el futuro es multimedia, videojuegos, realidad aumentada. Todo eso se puede hacer hoy en día en un navegador. Ese vídeo que hicieron la gente de marketing es un ejemplo que hacemos. Un videojuego como una película dentro del navegador y paso. Uy, que cae. En general, lo importante es eficacia. ¿Cómo acelerar la web? Y hay dos maneras. Uno es usar los dispositivos, comprar ordenadores más grandes. Internet Explorer 9, que funciona en ordenadores nuevos, que se acelera por el hardware, es súper rápido. Otra manera, también importante, es programar. Así tienes eficacia. Además, ¿y por qué todo eso es importante? Cuando más eficaz, menos batería usa. En un mundo donde todo es móvil, el consumo de batería es una preocupación real e importante. Hay más trabajo que viene. Una gran parte de lo de CSS, de HTML5, es reducir el consumo para procesar las aplicaciones para que funcionen. La red no está homogénea. Yo tengo un Macintosh. Fue muy nuevo hace 3 años. Tengo un smartphone de Nokia. Ya está roto. Tiene 7 años. No funciona. Pero la poca fue un smartphone. Viene ahora, en los próximos pocos años, unos 3.000 millones de usuarios a la web que todavía no lo han usado. Algunos van a tener un nuevo iJuego, un nuevo Android, un smartphone super pijo. La mayoría van al mercado local y van a comprar mi smartphone antiguo, porque eso es la infraestructura que la mitad del mundo que no tienen acceso hoy van a usar. Tenemos que diseñar teniendo en cuenta toda esa gente, además que nosotros, además que las funcionalidades avanzadas. Entonces, un vistacín, si hay preguntas, creo que hacemos después del último ponente, ¿quién será? François.
All right, thank you very much, Charles McCathieNevile.
François.
And up next we have François Doust, and will talk to us about web and TV.
I will, yes.
Thank you very much, François.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. That's a very impressive setting. I'm very pleased to be here in Bilbao for the Web Summit. So my name is François Doust. I'm activity lead for the web and TV activity in W3C. So that means I'm part of the technical team of W3C, such as Sean and Bert. Well, I'm here to talk just a little bit about web and TV in relation with accessibility and see, well, just a few points. I probably won't be long. As soon as I've figured out how to work the remote.
On the left, the button on the left.
It works. So the context of web and TV is the emergence of connected TV sets. You might already have some TV sets, some connected TV sets in your home, and that's a good thing. And there are many technical issues that you can think of when you try to bring the web on TV and TV on the web. It goes both ways, and it's kind of intertwined, but we're trying to address the different both directions. I'm listing a few there. I'm not willing to insist on them here. You have, well, TV actors will come with oh, I need to stream video, but I really need it to be protected because that's how it goes. And the web will say, well, no, we're not really looking into content protection today. And people have to talk to each other just to make sure that, well, they understand the use cases and requirements. And these are possible contexts. Oh, I can see myself on the top right corner. That's fantastic. So in that context, the W3C created what we call an interest group. An interest group is really a discussion forum. And how we started is typical of how we start work at W3C. We just say, well, there's this topic, web and TV in that case. It needs to be addressed somehow. There probably are things that need to be standardized and that we need to take on at W3C. So how are we going to do it? Well, we organize workshops, and during these workshops, we invite main actors of the field to come together, discuss, have coffees, chat, and just have fun a bit, and just bring the work and say, well, this is where we agree, this is where we disagree, and start some initial discussions. The result, so we had 2 workshops, one in September 2010 and one in Berlin in February this year. And the results of these 2 workshops were, yes, there is a lot of interest among the players. It's not quite clear yet if there are specific topics. I mean, we know the specific topics that need to be addressed, but it's not quite clear yet what are the precise work items that are up for standardization. So we've created an interest group. An interest group is a discussion forum. It's a kind of a SAS between the external world and the internal world for W3C, meaning the goal of the interest group is not to develop standards. It is to discuss use cases and requirements that will lead to actual work items, standardization work items within W3C. And so the Web and TV IG got created. It's already full of actual members participating. And so, for instance, the first work item that the IG discussed is the network task force. It might seem foreign at first, but the TV set is really the central piece in your home network, and it enables, and the goal is to enable scenarios such as when you're using your mobile device as a remote control for your TV, or when you're actually migrating from your TV set to your mobile device. These kinds of scenarios are being discussed, and we're trying to see whether there are things we could do to enable those scenarios directly within web browsers. There will be a third workshop in the US to complete a bit the different regions we've addressed so far, probably in September 2011. So Web on TV, it's web and TV is basically web on TV, and so even if it's not clear what the distinction between web on TV and TV on web can be, I'm going to go through a little bit of points related to accessibility. When you move the web on TV, what do you take? Well, you just have to think taking a desktop PC or a laptop PC and bringing it to a TV set, converting it into a TV set. What do you do? Well, you just remove the mouse, you remove the keyboard, you remove the processing power, and in the end, well, you get a screen, and the screen is the TV. Of course, you have a little bit of connectivity and a little bit of processing power left to do things. It's a large screen, but it's seen from a distance, so you cannot put so much text on it. And so it's very similar, if you think of it, to mobile devices. Because mobile devices, well, you remove the mouse, you remove the keyboard, and you have a small screen, but seen close enough. And it's really the same thing. And I'm coming from a mobile background, and at W3C, we've written a set of mobile web best practices to help web authors develop web pages and web applications would work well on mobile devices as well as on desktop devices. It's not, the goal is not to separate the issues, the context is really to bring all things together. And how did we do when we started the mobile web best practices work? Well, we looked at something that is called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that we already had at W3C that address accessibility. And a lot of things can be, there's a lot of overlap between thinking in terms of, between a mobile device and a TV set, and accessing the web with some disability. Of course, in one case we have machines, and in the other case we have real human beings, so the comparison is, needs to stop at some point. But there's an overlap. And we actually wrote a note that explains the matches between the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, and the mobile web best practices. And it's really similar for web and TV, so I expect, and I'm pretty sure those best practices also apply to web and TV because it's really the same topic. Now, if you take the reverse approach and try to bring TV on the web, you're really looking at moving from a TV as a device to TV as a service. So TV is not, the limit of what TV is not clear anymore. And this is a TV, as I already mentioned. That's my mobile phone. That's a TV. And TV actors are really interested in bringing that new experience to their customers everywhere. And the good thing about TV is that actually it's an old consumer electronic device, and there's already a lot of regulations that are out there for accessibility, and all the TV actors I've done a good job at accessibility on TV. And actually, when they come to the table, they say, oh, well, accessibility, yeah, it's a fact. We need to do it. We know how, I mean, we've been doing it. We know that it's very useful, and we're willing to do it again. So that's pretty cool from a web perspective to have TV guys involved in the discussions, because they know how to do, I mean, they already know that accessibility is a good thing. So, on top of accessibility for accessibility reasons, actually migration really introduces new use cases where accessibility features are not only accessibility features. So I'm thinking about just taking your mobile device and actually watching a movie on a subway, on a train, in a bus. You won't want, if you don't have earphones, headset, you don't want to put the sound on, so you'll need captioning, and captioning is an accessibility feature to start with. And that's really a good thing to have migration and this convergence between these two words. So eventually what we're looking at W3C right now is how we can merge these two words. And it involves thinking about how you can design web applications in a ubiquitous way, meaning that they would work equally well on desktop, mobile, TV, whatever device you can think of. And there are different ways to do this. I mean, actually, the web platform has been designed from scratch to do that through the separation of content and layout that Bert presented. And this separation enables ubiquitous development, and there are active work on what's called Y-area, accessible rich internet application, which actually are quite useful, again, not only for accessibility. It's fully not, I'm not even talking about accessibility as such here. It's really going to be useful for web development to apply those principles and those methods, those rules, to web applications so that they can work equally well on very different devices who have different constraints. Another area where we could work is trying to get convergence between WCAG and the different regulations that TV manufacturers and TV actors in the world have. These regulations vary on a country per country or region by region basis. And the question is, when you move TV on the web, what kind of regulations do you need to follow? The web world is more, again, is more WCAG. The TV world is more, well, legal things imposed by the government, and there needs to be convergence here, and we're looking forward to that convergence. So that's it. I really wanted to highlight a few points on web and TV. We're pretty excited about it, and we're seeing already the outcomes of the discussion for the, for instance, for the Home Network Task Force. We already know that we're very likely to start standardization effort on device discovery and how you can, on your local network, connect two devices together. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, François.